So, a little story on an instant where I screwed up. I was younger, in the military. I was taking side jobs. When we came back from Iraq, I had a staff sergeant drop off a Expedition, Eddie Bauer edition, early 2000 model. And he had these big giant rims on the vehicle, and I had to explain to him, a lot of people that go to these 24-inch rims or whatever it was at the time, 22-inch rims, with you increasing the weight of your rotating force on each wheel and changing the dynamic of how the vehicle brakes and functions, it would be nice to upgrade brakes, rotors, possibly see if there's a bigger setup for it. But he insisted that I just do the brakes. Now, I screwed up. I mean, I'm thinking that I screwed up anyway. I know a lot of guys, whenever they do a brake job, they don't put Loctite and stuff back on their caliper bracket, the anchor bolts. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. If you look at them, a lot of times from the factory, they'll actually come with some red or some yellow colored Loctite that you can kind of see on the threads as they've been pulled on and off over and over again. Some of that Loctite disappears. Now, I had a situation where I did the brakes on this guy's vehicle, and he had all kinds of stuff on his lights and different shocks and all kinds of stuff. The vehicle was raised a little bit, airbag delete, etc., and had bigger rims on this thing. Now, me not knowing what I know now, all these years later, I decided to do the brake job and let it go. Torqued everything down like you're supposed to. About a week later, I get a call off the clock, about 5 o'clock, 5:30 at night, just getting off work. And he says, "Hey, I've got this clanking sound coming from my front right wheel. And you just did the brakes on the vehicle about a week ago. Could you come take a look at it? I'm in a parking lot right now and I don't feel safe driving." So I grabbed some of my tools and such, and I head off to the restaurant where he's parked off post, and one of the caliper bracket bolts backed out. Since that day, I don't put vehicles back together unless I know for sure and I'm familiar with it, that I don't have to use some type of Loctite, and that's typically if there's enough Loctite still on the anchor pin bolts or the bracket bolts. I typically try to use a little bit of blue Loctite on all of my caliper bracket bolts. That's the main supporting bracket of the entire caliper bracket assembly, or the caliper assembly. And because of that one situation that I screwed up in, I still to this day use some type of Loctite, even if it's just a little bit, on my bracket bolts. Unless I see that there's enough Loctite still there that it's going to hold. Even at that, I typically try to run at least a real fine thin bead of blue Loctite on my bracket bolts. Now, I've run into situations before in the field where guys still to this day refuse to use Loctite on caliper, the supporting bracket bolts. It scares me because of that one situation and what could happen. It's led me to make a personal choice more on putting just a little bit of blue Loctite on each one of the bolts that I pull out. It's a scary situation when you're messing with somebody's brakes and it's their life. Now, that could have been bad, but since then I've never made that mistake, or I've never had an issue where a customer has had to come back because of a bracket issue. And that's one of the simple screw ups that I've had where I've learned from that. Now, I say simple, it could have been catastrophic. Somebody could have got hurt, something bad could have happened. I don't know. There's 3 other brakes there. Maybe it would have had more of a pull to one side than anything, because you would have had 3 brakes braking and 1 or 2 in the back and 1 in the front, and the other one would have been loose and cattywampus, applying wrong, could have bound up. It could have been anything. That's the first could have been major screw up that I've ever had working on somebody's vehicle, and I learned my lesson real fast from that. That's why I always keep a tube of blue Loctite around me pretty much at all times, and I'm definitely afraid of not putting something on a caliper bracket when it comes to that, because that one situation. That's why I use blue Loctite. People ask me in my videos all the time, why don't you just put them back on and torque them down? I just can't. Because of the one issue that I had, it's something that's in me now that has pawed at me for years, thinking about that one situation, where that's why I like to keep blue Loctite on me at all times. Just wanted to share that with you guys.